Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. As Jesus came out of the temple, one of the disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones, and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, and John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be? And what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. The apocalypse is here. Not one stone will be left upon another. There will be wars and rumors of wars. Nation will rise up against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes and famines, because this is the beginning of the birth pangs. Yikes. What do we mean by this, and what does it look like? I mean, after all, we experienced our first snowcopolis of the season. You know, that time of year where there's no bread or milk to be found in the store. And it takes us longer to commute home. I heard stories of a few of you taking hours to get home. Where we worry about the winter that's coming and what that might look for us. Is that what Jesus is talking about? Or on the other side of the country in California that seems to be either burning or in ashes. You may have seen those news reports, those selfie videos being taken of people driving through the fire, literally saying to each other, "It's like we're in the apocalypse." As homes and businesses and whole communities are razed and people are displaced. Is that what Jesus is saying? Is it upon us? Or the wars and rumors of wars. We have our people across the world serving in harm's way. We have those conflicts that are on our minds and those we have forgotten about or don't pay much attention to, and people's lives that are ripped apart, and people that have died, and people that are displaced and looking for a place to land. Is that what Jesus is talking about? It seems like ages, news cycles ago, but remember the hurricanes? We had hurricanes this year too. Lots of them. The ones we remember are the ones in the Carolinas and in Florida, and people rebuilding their lives there all these weeks later. Is that it? Or how about communities in Florida and in California ripped apart again by gun violence, and what that means, and the helplessness we all feel in the midst of that, and people stuck in gridlock about what to do, and nothing happens, and we sit here waiting and waiting for the other shoe to drop. Is that what Jesus is talking about? I mean, when we talk about the apocalypse, it conjures up some kind of, some words, some feelings, some thoughts about it. It's fear, and it's destruction, and it's pain, and it's suffering. And if you watch TV, it's zombies coming. No zombies, don't worry. It's hell on earth come among us, right? So the word apocalypse actually means a revealing. We have that book in the Bible called Revelation. It's literally a translation of apocalypse. It's an unveiling. It's a showing what's going on. It's a seeing a thing for what it actually is. I mean, when Jesus is talking about wars and rumors of wars and the destruction of the temple and people's lives being flipped around, isn't he just describing the world in which we live? It's full of turmoil and destruction. It's full of violence. It's full of uncertainty. It's full of fear. I mean, certainly for the people that lived in that time and the people that Mark first wrote these stories to would have that in their mind that the temple was destroyed. The Romans did exert a lot of violence among the people. The future was uncertain. They didn't know if God was going to rescue them or see them through. But what's the message? A couple of things Jesus says that you may have overlooked. Do not be alarmed. This should not surprise you. This is the world in which we live in. We like to keep it at arm's length. We want to think that we're safe or immune from it. I mean, isn't that why the disciples, after following Jesus around all this time, where he's making all the authorities angry at him for doing the things that he does, like heal the sick and casting out demons and forgiving sins and including the outsider, aren't those the things that get him killed? And yet, what do they say? Wow, the temple's kind of nice, isn't it? How about these large buildings? How about these nice stones? This looks permanent. Maybe this will protect us or keep the world at bay. I mean, we might want to say that, right? After all, we just finished building this place, not with stones, but with cement and wood and drywall and tile and paint. I mean, are we safe now that we're here inside? Or is Jesus revealing something to us? Don't be alarmed by the world. Don't be alarmed by it. And don't be led astray. That's the other thing he mentions. Don't be led astray. Many people will say, I know, I've got the answer. This is what it is. Or I know it's really their fault. You should be afraid of them. But doesn't Jesus have a different message than that? In a world that appears to be on fire all the time. I heard this story this week, and I thought it was great. I had to look it up twice just to make sure that it happened. So there's a high school in Paradise, California, one of those communities that was completely destroyed by the fires there, called Paradise Adventist Academy. The building was lost and everyone was in disarray. Their girls' high school volleyball team was supposed to play in a championship game against a neighboring high school in Auburn called Forest Lake Christian School. And rather than cancel the event or try to struggle along or postpone it somewhere down the line, the kids on the Forest Lake Christian School decided, we know what we're going to do. So they raised some money and they bought the other team, the opposing team for this game, new uniforms. They got them equipment so they could play. But they decided to do one more thing, to be, like humans. So they raised some more money and they get everybody on the team a $300 gift card so they could help their family out. Because life is more than just volleyball. And they played the game. They played the game. This is what we're supposed to do, right? Isn't this what it's all about? I mean, we know the fires come. We know the earthquakes will come. We know the famines will come. We know there'll be wars and rumors of wars. We know all this is going to happen. And what is revealed to us in the world in which we live? But to care for our neighbor, just like Jesus cares for us. Isn't that the heart of what the good news is all about? So it was a little while ago, I want to say a year ago, but maybe the calendar will say otherwise. Might have been a little earlier than that. I was having lunch with several of our leaders, the church council, I believe, if I'm remembering right. We went out to Penny Lane Pub. We had normally had some more like planning, strategic meetings. This was more just to kind of be together because it was in the midst of getting ready to actually build. And we were talking about our hopes and dreams of what we could be as the people of God here in this place, let alone how the building might turn out once it was completed. And I don't remember a lot of the details, was, or even what I had for lunch, although I'm sure it was a delicious burger because that's normally what I get there. But I remember three things that stood out from that conversation. The first was the absolute love of those people for this community of people of God. You want to hear that from your leaders, right? I mean, they talked about the relationships, they talked about tough times they went through and were pulled together, they talked about people that they didn't know before but became friends, they talked about work we've done in the community, they talked about all those things that make us St. Paul. It was great. And they talked about their families. Parents if they were still living, kids if they had them, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, the whole gamut. And their love for them and what those people mean in their lives, giving thanks. And then there was a third part of the conversation, which is what really stuck with me from that time to now. Because with the exception of a few of us, the people that were gathered for that conversation had something in common, a lament that they all shared. And that was that their grown children were no longer connected to the church, whether it was here in this place or out in other places where they now lived. And it was a genuine, open, honest conversation about that, and a lot of mutual support around that, other than the few of us that weren't experiencing that because we either have kids in the house and still make them come whether they want to or not, or didn't have kids or some other life situation. But that was the conversation. And we talked about that a little bit. Now, I've been a pastor for almost 17 years. And it hasn't been 17 years, 2002, yeah, almost 17. And I've not really experienced, when people look back and say, like, the good old days, like when you just, like, open the doors of the church and the main thing you had to do was just take everybody's name down because they all wanted to get in. Remember those days? Or that there were so many kids, you didn't know what to do with them all, so you had to kind of, like, organize them into groups and activities, so you at least gave them something to do. Or that the main thing you did as a church was really not do anything to ruffle anybody's feathers, because really, unless you really mess something up, things would just move along just fine. Just fine. I haven't really experienced that. I don't know if you've experienced that or not. I mean, what I experience mostly is people that are so oppressed by their busyness, they are just gasping for a place of solace in their lives. Whether they have family members or on their own or in different situations, it seems everybody is running around like crazy people. That I've experienced. I have experienced mostly people we all love church, we're here, but mostly people on the outside being at the very least a little bit skeptical about what it is we do when we're together. And that's probably on the mild side. And I've experienced, at least our young people, but I think all of us really, want to do something that matters. Want to be part of something that makes a difference in the world. When you see everything on fire out there, can we do stuff together that might, maybe, a little bit, just move the needle a hair? I think the question for us in our time is not what latest thing has blown up, or what the future looks like, or can we even be prepared for it ultimately. It's a question of trust. Does God have us or not? We should really think about that. Because if we think God really does have us, we really have not much to worry about at all. Then all we have is the work to do together. A way to think about it might be this. Are the best days behind us, or is the opportunity in front of us to be faithful in this world? Are we people with regret and remorse, or are we people of faithfulness and hope in a world that doesn't seem to want to tell us we should have either? Do we want to be people that live in the ashes, just trying to hold on to the little pieces that are left? Or are we like the mighty phoenix that rises up and soars high? Are we the people that are buried, dead in the ground, to be forgotten? Or are we the people who are stepping out of the grave with our Lord Jesus Christ for a legacy that's yet to be written, for a future that is right in front of us? If only we'll take a step back and believe and trust and hope as the veil is pulled away. Amen.